Supporting your health on a holistic level can definitely be a confusing process, especially when you have one camp of people saying you should never, ever, ever use supplements ever, and another camp of people saying that all you need is supplements. Today, I have Justine Stenger on the podcast, and she has an extensive background in understanding and utilizing quantum health tools such as light, such as magnetism, water, all of these things. Yet she also utilizes support for phospholipids and the cell membrane. And today we're going to dive into the importance of that. We're also going to talk about topics like fish oil, why people are getting the whole fish oil thing incorrect, and what a safe alternative would be, histamine intolerance, and so much more. I'm so excited for you to watch this episode. As always, my guest's information, Justine's information, is going to be down in the show notes for you so you can follow her. She does still see clients as of the date of sending this episode out. So if you're interested in working with her, you can also hook up with her using the links in the show notes. I hope you enjoy today's episode, and I'll chat with you again soon. Today's show is brought to you by Upgraded Formulas. They have my absolute favorite magnesium. You can get the best and only clinically studied stabilized nano magnesium supplement on the market from Upgraded Formulas using my code YOGI for 10% off. Did you know that magnesium is actually required for over 800 enzymatic reactions in the body? This clinically studied magnesium has proven to improve sleep quality and energy by over 60%, specifically improving light sleep measurement by 90%, REM sleep by 150%, and deep sleep by 250%. That means more energy, better mood, and deeper sleep. Who doesn't want that? What makes this the best on the market? This specific magnesium is nano magnesium, which means it is easier for your body to absorb and use. In fact, it is absorbed up to 99.99%, which means you'll feel the results instantaneously. A lot of people are quick to talk about the benefits of sunlight, but what gets often missed in the conversation is the benefit of darkness and the importance of protecting yourself from blue and green light after sunset. That is why I choose Viva Rays as my go-to source for protecting my circadian rhythms. You can use the code YOGI to save 15% off at Viva Rays. Now, you may have seen some of these studies popping up. I call them fear mongering about blue blockers not being effective. And that is a partial truth, because when you use blue blockers that are clear or that have not been tested with a spectrometer to actually block what they say they do, they will not protect your circadian rhythms. And they are not catching those key wavelengths that you need to be blocking in order for your body to be able to repair, for you to make melatonin, which is a master antioxidant. And artificial light at night has been in the scientific literature extensively linked to a host of hormonal cancers, obesity, diabetes, and all sorts of metabolic issues. That again is why I choose Viva Rays as my go-to source for protecting my circadian rhythms to allow my body to get adequate darkness at night. You can use the code YOGI to save 15% over at Viva Rays, and you can actually trust that they block the frequencies of light that they say they do. Thanks to Viva Rays for sponsoring today's podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. Today, I have Justine here, and we probably could have just skipped the, the recording and just talked for the whole time, but I finally did after, a good half hour here, turn on the camera. So Justine, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, I love what you're doing. I love the work that you're putting out there. I'm watching you grow and just put out amazing information. And you have the kind of quantum lens through which you view health, but you also really are dialing in on the fatty acids, cell danger response. I mean, so many things that are not being talked about that I think are really important in our overall healing and health. So I don't know, where do you want to start? Maybe tell people a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my background, I got my degree from the University of Alberta and then went on to I was really interested in nutrition. And so went on to do a holistic nutrition and therapeutic chef certification from Bowman College, and then got introduced to Dr. Bruce Hoffman, who is an integrative medical doctor and got really interested in functional medicine and went down that hole. I did my training with the Institute for Functional Medicine. And then just, I don't want to say got frustrated with the whole people on those levels, like really the biochemical level, just because I didn't feel intuitively, I felt like there was more.
Mm.
And I am really curious and I love learning. And I ended up listening to one of Jack Cruz's podcasts, which we discussed earlier. And that kind of led me down this whole path around quantum biology. And before that, I should say, I got super interested in phospholipids and fatty acids. And that was based on my clinical experience with Bruce. And so I studied phospholipids and fatty acids, cell membrane medicine, and studied with some lipid researchers for years, actually, and became so interested and so fascinated and so passionate about teaching people about supporting the structure and the function of the cell membrane, because that cell membrane is really the brain of the entire cell. And now I'm even more excited to teach because I brought in those quantum principles as well, and now see the cell through a completely different lens, and the mitochondria, and really focus my whole practice really around mitochondrial medicine now. And of course, I bring in the phospholipids and the fatty acids, and then all of those quantum things that I know you speak about too.
Yeah, that's what I really like about what you do is you're not just trapped in biochemical model or even just purely bioelectrical model. I think that there's truth on both sides. I lean more towards the bioenergetic, electrical way of looking at the body, mitochondrial health. But we can't discard completely biochemical model. And I think that you do a great job of layering on the parts that are really, really crucial. And like you mentioned, the cell membrane, I don't think people really understand the impact of why that's so important in all illness, right?
Well, I mean, when we
Or
really break it
wellness.
down, yeah, and when we really break it down to the most foundational level, ev- would start on a cellular level, right? Health starts on a cellular level. And so, as much as just to speak to, the grounding in the sunshine and the making the water, like water and magnetism, and those are critically important, of course. And we also need to make sure that we actually have proper structure and function in the membrane. And
Mm.
so, no amount of grounding and no amount of sunshine is going to repair a mitochondrial membrane that's been damaged. That's where we can really use and lean into lipid replacement therapy. So, the use of these exogenous phospholipids and fatty acids to really provide the body with exactly what it needs to go in and restore the health of those membranes. I mean, I often use this as an example when we think about the phosphatidylethylamine membrane, so the inner mitochondrial membrane where oxidative phosphorylation is occurring on. That membrane is rich in this phospholipid called phosphatidylethylamine. And then we have this other phospholipid called the cardiolipin that sits on top of that membrane and houses complex 1, complex 3, and complex 4. So when we think about the efficiency of those electrons going from protein complex to protein complex and our ability to make water and ATP and carbon dioxide, and for the mitochondria to do the 13 functions that they're involved in, if we have a breakdown on that membrane, the structural component of that membrane, the mitochondria is not going to be able to do that work. And so that's where we can really lean into using these phospholipids to build reserve capacity and give the body exactly what it needs to restore function. So I think that they're a big player in especially restoring. I mean, there's a whole field of research there around this called lipidomics,
Mm.
where we can use exogenous phospholipids and fatty acids to support restoring cellular function. So I don't look at it through like one or the other. I know a lot of
Mm.
people that are in the quantum field are very anti supplements, like you don't need to take anything. All
Because
you
the
need.
deuterium, right? So like with phospholipids, I don't think that unless you're using like seed oils in those particular supplements, I don't think that that's as much of an issue as when you're putting in like 30 different plant compounds and heavy metals and things like that. Am I correct in saying that or no?
Yeah, well, the phospholipid, so the body biophospholipid complex is the one that I use and recommend because that's the one we've used clinically for so long, and it's a really incredible product. It's pure phospholipids, it's just fat. So
Mm,
when you think about deuterium is going to be found in carbohydrates,
yep.
right?
Sugars. Yep.
And so there should not be any, very, very low levels of deuterium or equivalent to many of these other, fats. Now with seed oils, Sarah, it's the processing. My understanding is that it's the processing of those seed oils that increases the deuterium content. So when you look at like the body biobalance oil, which is seed oils, a lot of people will say, why are you recommending seed oils? This
They
is a
do. Yep.
it's a cold pressed, extraction from sunflower and flax to provide the body with those essential nutrients. So essential fatty acids are not up for negotiation. We
Hmm.
require them. Our body can't make them. So that product is cold pressed. There's no hexane, no solvents, no bleaches, no deodorizers. So when you look at the deuterium content of a cold pressed seed oil,
Hmm.
it's low in deuterium. It's not a high deuterium food. So I'm not sure where I know that it's hard to find a lot
People
of
are
these.
just, I think they're so confused about seed oils because I'll see, oh, I can't use sesame seed oil on my skin. I can't, like they kind of group all of these oils into one category when it's like the main ones we're concerned about would be like canola or rapeseed oil. What are some of the other ones that would kind of fall under the like, let's maybe not consume those or even put them on our skin? Um, there's a group
Yes.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So corn, cottonseed, canola, soy, sunflower, safflower, grapeseed oil, rice bran oil, avocado oil is in that camp as well. Those would all be if you're using those from a grocery store, getting them from a restaurant, finding them in a package or a box or a bag, those are all going to be in that category of industrial seed oils. So those are poison. Those are so highly toxic to our cells for so many reasons. So I'm not talking or condoning the use of industrial seed oils. When you understand the impact that they have on our cell membrane, on our mitochondria, on our DNA, it is catastrophic.
Mm.
So you don't want to be consuming those oils. And I'm not even in the camp. I know I'm pretty hardcore. I live and breathe what I teach. I'm not even in the camp of let's just consume these once in a while.
Mm.
It's want to avoid them at all costs, especially if you're an individual that is, determined to keep your cells healthy, because those really do havoc on a cellular level. Now,
Mm.
when it comes to essential fatty acids, this is where there's a lot of confusion. So linoleic acid, which is the main fatty acid that's found in a lot of those oils that I listed,
Mhm.
is an essential fatty acid. It's actually, when we look at the fatty acids that are found within the cell membrane, there's four main fatty acids. So linoleic acid, arachidonic acid, DHA, and oleic acid are our four most abundant fatty acids in the membrane. Of course, there's many others, but those are found in the highest concentrations. And so this whole narrative around avoiding linoleic acid, think about the devastation when it comes to our cellular health. That's literally the most prominent fatty acid that's found in our cell membranes. And the downstream metabolite to that arachidonic acid, which is the main fatty acid found in our myelin sheath, is we're going to be low on both of those if we're avoiding these omega 6s.
Mm.
So we got to differentiate between industrial seed oils and then these pure functional forms of omega 6, like the body biobalance oil would be in that category. But I
Mm.
just happen to have this. I've been studying this book, this omega 6 essential fatty acids. It's called Pathophysiology and Roles in Clinical Medicine. And this book it's a textbook of literature. And it's been so eye opening because to have a deficiency of linoleic acid is correlated with basically across the board degenerative diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, cardiovascular disease. We're looking at non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's associated with skin conditions like psoriasis and eczema. So there are really devastating consequences to having deficiencies in these essential fatty acids. And if we have, the whole conversation, which I'm sure you've heard so many times, well, we have a 20-to-1 ratio because everybody's eating a standard North American diet and we're getting so much of these oils from our diet. And to
Mm,
me, that's
not you,
completely,
not me,
yeah,
not my family.
it's completely missing the point that those should be avoided. Nobody should
Right.
have high levels of omega-6 from eating those foods. We want to be supplying our cells, with these really pure functional forms of these essential fatty acids. But
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, I know we've gone over a red blood cell fatty acid test, so you've seen this, but I can't even tell you probably thousands of patients that I've seen now over the last 13 or 14 years of looking at these tests. The number of people that are supplementing with fish oil and their
Yeah.
omega-3 fatty acids are high. And because there's this competition between the delta D6 and delta D5 desaturase enzyme, that and omega-3s will outcompete omega-6s. So
Mhm.
in dosing omega-3s really high, we end up suppressing the omega-6s. And as a result, these patients end up demyelinating. I see that all the
Wow.
time, all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of that, honestly. I always see the ratio just being completely off and a mess. But I've never seen that before. But you're seeing more and more of that, huh?
I see that, like, we run the lab from the Kennedy Krieger lab at the Johns Hopkins University, which
Oh,
Body Bio has paired with. And so that's
oh.
the gold standard for fatty acid testing. So on that test, it has a myelination index. So most of these fatty acid tests that are doing like an index,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I always question what the ratio is, because we want a 4-to-1 ratio from the omega-6 to the omega-3 side. And so I know some of these labs are doing like a 2-to-1 ratio
Mm-hmm.
from omega-6 to 3, or a 1-to-1, which is not based on the literature. Dr. Yuta is probably one of the most famous fatty acid researchers. And
Mm-hmm.
all of his literature shows that we want a 4-to-1 ratio uh, within the cell membrane from omega-6 to the omega-3 side. So I can't speak to all these other fatty acid tests. We've only used that Kennedy Krieger lab, which is again the gold
Interesting.
standard. So
Wow. Very interesting.
yeah, it is. Fatty acids, I mean, when you think about the role they play in keeping our cells healthy and our mitochondria. So I talked about the cardiolipin, that
Mm-hmm.
phospholipid layer that
Mm-hmm.
sits on top of the ethanolamine membrane. That is really rich in linoleic acid. And another consequence of supplementing with high dose, fish oil that so many people do, it
Mm-hmm.
actually displaces DHA from the or displaces linoleic acid from the cardiolipin, and impairs cardiolipin. And that cardiolipin is maintaining the structure of the inner mitochondrial membrane. And like I mentioned, housing those protein complexes.
Mm.
So we can actually directly facilitate, damage to our cell membrane, the outer membrane, and also the mitochondria by, keeping or not having that balance and harmony between the two essential fatty acids, and thinking, like so many things. And I know we've talked about this before too, that there's this like more of one thing is better, like a very
Oh my
reductive
gosh.
and
Yeah.
myopic approach. So
Yep.
let's all take omega-3s because they're anti-inflammatory. I mean, that's kind of the common belief,
Right.
and that's just not the whole story.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of talk in kind of the quantum area of how fish oils, period, are not necessarily a good thing to supplement because they're out of the S and 2 position. Do you feel that way as well? Or do you think there are any fish oil supplements that you would recommend for people who don't necessarily want to eat seafood? And my other question is, maybe before we even get to that, is this there the same danger, or do you see that ever happening with people who maybe have like a spoonful of salmon roe or just eat wild seafood on a regular basis?
You don't see it as much with individuals that eat a lot of seafood, and I'm in that camp. I love seafood. I
Yeah.
will share a little hack though. If you are somebody that eats a lot of seafood, I always recommend it, making sure that you're supporting the parent oil. So I would always recommend the Body Bio Balance oil for that.
Okay.
And then if you support GLA, gamma linolenic acid, with evening primrose oil, you are
Okay.
going to support that conversion from gamma linolenic acid to dihomo gamma linolenic acid, which goes right into PGE1 prostaglandins. So we don't want to be deficient in that dihomogamma-linolenic acid because of the roles that it plays, the anti-inflammatory roles that it plays in the body.
Mm.
So, but it's harder to overdose. So like when you think about fish oil supplementation, Sarah, a lot of these capsules are like people are taking like 3-4 grams of.
Therefore, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would have to be eating pounds of like stockeye salmon to get
The
that
same.
dose,
Yeah.
which is crazy. It's just not, our brain needs 7.2 milligrams of DHA per day.
Hmm. Yeah, it
So
does. Yeah, I think that's the people are really confused about the whole fish oil supplementation just because like the whole functional medicine, alternative medicine has made it such a thing of like you got to get your fish oil, you got to take your supplements, you got to take your fish oil caps. And yeah, I just people that do my programs, I kind of push them more towards eating the salmon roe, trying to eat more wild seafood, oysters, the smaller ones that are going to cause less of an issue for them, and trying to do that regularly. And there's green pastures butter cod liver oil that Dr. Sarah Pugh had started recommending that to a few of my members, and um, I think that one's been okay for people, but I haven't had them run a fatty acid test, so I don't know at the end of the day. That's why I'm always curious to hear from other clinicians like what they're seeing, especially since you're actually running kind of a more in-depth fatty acid test for people.
yeah, so there's so much to break down here, Sarah, because so first of all, I'm super impressed that you know about the SN2 position because that's the position that the DHA needs to be in order to get incorporated into the central nervous system.
Yes.
And peripheral, I believe as well. And so during processing, there is the possibility that the the positioning is going to get manipulated
Mm-hmm.
into either the SN1 or the SN3 position. And those two positions are not going to be as likely to get incorporated into the central and peripheral nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
In whole food, the DHA is always on the SN2 position. So when we
Mm-hmm.
think about any form of wild seafood, and I agree with you, I recommend the like wild caught stockeye salmon and oysters are, I mean, if there's one food that I recommend to everyone, it would be oysters.
Yep.
They are literally a multivitamin and mineral. Speaking of supplements, if you would incorporate oysters and beef liver on a regular basis, you definitely would not need supplements. Those are two
Mm-hmm.
foods that kind of cover the entire gamut outside of things like molecular hydrogen and some of these other things that I've heard you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Now with fish oil, speaking of body bio, they do have a whole food form of fish oil. It's extracted from herring roe. So it's the fatty acids are found within a phospholipid molecule. And the positioning, when it's extracted in whole food form, the positioning stays the same. And
Okay.
the phosphatidylcholine is protecting those fatty acids from oxidation. So if anyone is going to use a fish oil, that's the one that I nudge them to use.
Mm.
And I don't recommend fish oil over whole food ever. I mean, that would be for someone who's like, I cannot eat seafood, for whatever reason, and you need to support those omega-3s, then we would want to use something like the Body Bio fish oil that's whole food in a whole food form. And it's also a lower dose. So, 2 capsules is right around 400 milligrams of
Mm-hmm.
EPA versus, the 3 or 4 grams that some people are taking in other products. And then we have the whole conversation around oxidation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
DHA has 6 double carbon bonds. It is highly, highly, highly susceptible to oxidation. And so to recommend a fish oil supplement to someone is really, in my opinion, playing a little bit of Russian roulette because an oxidized oil is poison.
Mm-hmm.
A functional, pure, whole, oil that hasn't been oxidized in the whole food form is medicine for our body. So we're playing that game of Russian roulette every time we reach for a fish oil supplement because we just don't know if it's
Mm-hmm.
oxidized or not. And of course, then companies add like lemon flavor and orange flavor and all these things to mask the potential signs of oxidation as well too. So I just feel so much more comfortable recommending whole food forms of seafood, and that's for everything as much as we
Yeah.
can.
And what do you do for those people who when you are looking at that test and you see like their 3 to 6 is so far out of whack from overdoing the supplements? Do you have them do the Body Bio PC oil, or which I know there's a few of them because I've got them. I ordered them for my daughter, but I always mix them. always mix the names up, even though I give those to her. Do you have them supplement with more of those, or how do you handle that situation in particular?
So I do use a lot of the Body Bio Balance oil because again, that's covering the two essential parent oils. So I feel that is such a good insurance policy
Mhm.
to make sure people are getting in adequate amounts of omega-6 and 3 in the proper ratio. I also love the evening primrose oil for the gamma
Get
linolenic
that one
acid.
too. Yep.
And that becomes more and more important as you age as well. And interestingly enough, Sarah, that there are a lot of skin disorders like psoriasis and eczema
Mm,
are directly linked to low levels of gamma linolenic. Of course, there's probably many other factors as well, but a lot of those individuals have very low levels of gamma linolenic acid.
mm,
And the PC is something I think everybody on the planet should be on. Honestly, living in the world that we live in today with the level of toxicity, the electromagnetic frequencies, we are constantly being bombarded with things that damage our cell membrane.
hmm.
And even just Garth Nicholson, who's one of the first researchers in this whole field of lipid research and lipid replacement therapy, I mean, the outcomes that he sees using lipid replacement therapy, exogenous phospholipids, is you just can't turn a blind eye to it. I mean, it's
Mm,
a powerful form of treatment, and it's not even. And I would go so far to say that I wouldn't even put those in the category of supplements because they're really essential nutrients and conditionally essential nutrients. And if we think about our body just like we would a bank account, we're constantly taking withdrawals out of our biochemical bank account,
mhm,
right, to repair damage. And so if we're not putting deposits back into that biochemical bank account, so the body has what it needs to go in and restore damaged parts of the membrane, then we're going to end up in a really bad situation
mhm.
because the body can't just magically fix those membranes without the materials to fix them.
Yeah.
And so that's why I am literally the biggest fan of the Body Bio PC. I've seen it clear toxins from the cell over and over again, clear DNA adducts. So those are toxins that are covalently bonded to individuals' DNA. And I know today we were going to talk a little bit about autism, but this is something that I really try to do my best to educate women who are planning on getting pregnant, the
Mm,
importance of making sure that they have healthy mitochondria and lots of reserve capacity, and they've cleared those toxins out of the cell. And knowing that we can use something like the body biophospholipid complex to do that, that's gentle, it's not pulling, it's not binding, it's not stripping, it's not lowering somebody's reserve capacity, it's building somebody is, I mean, in my opinion, just such a beautiful tool to use to support everyone, but even women that are planning on getting pregnant, so we can support their mitochondrial health and improve outcomes in babies' health.
yeah. I mean, the amount of people that are having problems with their kids now is astounding, developmental delays. And there's other things I believe at play, like these poor babies are just completely overloaded. But a lot of them are coming in with, not the best shot to begin with when it comes to all the things they're going to have to be exposed with. They just literally don't have the defense mechanism to shut that down. And I think that it's just a major crisis that continues to build, really.
Well, I think it's in understanding too for women that they are giving 100% of their mitochondria to their baby. None
Mm-hmm.
none of that comes from the father. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so even when you look at the autism research, you do see higher mutations, and this is largely based on Dr. Doug Wallace's work.
Mm-hmm.
He's really trying to push forward this research around mitochondrial dysfunction and autism.
Heteroplasmy rate. Yeah.
Yeah, because you see a higher that heteroplasmy, those mutations in the mitochondrial DNA, you see
Mm-hmm.
really high levels in these children that have autism. And then that makes sense because that is epigenetically regulating our DNA, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
going to determine how, the baby develops too and neurodevelopment. And so there's even just from using phospholipids after if a child has been diagnosed with autism, and I would love to hear your story just with Alexis too. If I know that hydrogen has been a really powerful therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
if you've noticed that the phospholipid therapy has improved symptoms at all.
Yeah, I mean, with her, it's I'd say definitely it's been a boost. The hydrogen's probably been the most impactful because what is it also doing? It's also working to support the mitochondria and the cell membrane as well through other mechanisms. Um, but yeah, I definitely think it has been helpful. And she is just so intuitive about things. Like I told you, I have to hide the bottles because she'll go and just like try to take a handful of them I'm like, no, you don't need that many. But like they're like, no, it's all right. If that happens, it's okay. But um yeah, it's definitely something that when I have something that I'm giving to her, whether it's minerals or just any kind of a supplement, like she'll kind of be drawn to it and ask for more of it if she's really lacking in it. And those have been things she's just like literally wants to eat a handful. I'm like, let's not do that. But yeah.
Well, the good news is, and I know I told you this before, but the good news is because they're really, I mean, they're conditionally essential nutrients, they're
Mm-hmm.
fats. And even just from a methylation standpoint, like most of our methylation goes to making phosphatidylcholine. So for every gram that we supplement with is a gram that your body doesn't need to make. So you free up all this space for repair. So they have so many functions outside of just supporting the cell membrane structure and function. Like they have anti-inflammatory effects. They're really potent anti-inflammatories. They
Mm-hmm.
improve cell signaling and even fatty acids too. Fatty acids are precursors for signaling molecules that regulate the immune response. Inflammation, brain function, they're involved in energy production. So their fatty acids, of course, are vital for mitochondrial energy production, and then of course support overall cellular health and function. So there's so many therapeutic benefits to phosphatidylcholine improves fatty acid metabolism, and you
Mm-hmm.
actually see faulty fatty acid metabolism as one of the characteristics of autism as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to impact, cell to cell signaling. That's going to impact signal transduction. That's going to impact neurotransmitter production and signaling. So you really do see this head to toe benefit when you start using these phospholipids and fatty acids. And then, of course, we want to be doing all the other things that support mitochondrial function as well. And
Yeah.
I know this is everything you teach, like the farther and farther that we get away from nature, the more we remove ourselves from the natural world, from the ecological system, the sicker and sicker we become as human beings. And that is really obvious. And I would hope that that's obvious to everyone. And so the key therapeutic tool is how can we connect back with the natural world? And
Mm-hmm.
that becomes, and I'm sure that you see this in your groups and through social media too, that it becomes harder and harder all the time because we have set up indoor environments in a way that they are so highly toxic. They are
Mm-hmm.
so highly damaging to our mitochondria. And because our mitochondria have that characteristic, they act like a sixth sense, right? They
Mm-hmm.
are sixth sense. They're always surveying the environment to determine whether or not you're safe. And so
Yep.
when you put yourself in an environment that the mitochondria are going to perceive danger, well, then of course they're going to enter that cell danger response, right? And they're going to
Right.
shut down metabolically.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and we mentioned autism, but there's just so many things that I'm seeing explode, like autoimmune conditions, nervous system issues. You talk a lot about cell danger response and and I know because you've worked under Bruce Hoffman, I've had him on the show as well, like how ingrained the nervous system is in all these different conditions. So I'm wondering like how this kind of methodology, or I'm not really sure what to call it, but how what you teach with the phospholipids and the support there, how that really supports the nervous system as well, because that's like a huge buzzword right now. And yeah, I see a lot of people that I'm like, there's some nervous system dysregulation that's really contributing to this issue that you've got going on.
Yeah, and that's a really loaded conversation
I
because
know.
there's so many things that go
Many
into
facets.
that dysregulation. And when you look at it through kind of more of a simplistic lens, when you enter the cell danger response, so this is for anyone that's listening, this is really based on this is Dr. Robert Navios' work. And so when a cell danger response, or CDR1, so think about like mast cell activation syndrome, classic CDR1. And a lot of those people have really severe nervous system dysregulation. Part of it, Sarah, I think, is that when you're the allostatic, when the load exceeds your body's ability to maintain homeostasis,
Mm-hmm.
your mitochondria go into that shutdown, we see a loss of resilience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we are completely discombobulated by the smallest little stressors. We're scared of every supplement. We're scared of foods. We're, scared to be thrown out of our routine. I've worked with so many people that don't even want to like drive into the city
Mm-mm.
because they feel, so nervous about being exposed to air pollution or the electromagnetic frequencies in the city or whatever it may be. And so I think then you end up in this really vicious cascade where you're just scared of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then that's going to exacerbate, that response that your body has. So working on, you obviously can't heal if you don't get into a parasympathetic state. So
Mm-hmm.
working on bioregulation, any, nervous system regulation, and that's going to be different for everybody because we're all going to be drawn to different modalities of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a critical component of healing
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And we also see, Sarah, that when you start to restore that health cycle and patients move from CDR1 to CDR2, you start to see that patients feel safer, they're less reactive. So I don't think it's just about, okay, if we regulate the nervous system, then this person is going to be able to tolerate all these things and able to heal.
Right.
I think that there's so many inputs that are required, which is I mentioned to you is what I teach my clients. It's all about what are all the inputs that are required to restore the health cycle. And that really entails making sure that your body is in a safe environment. And
Mm-hmm.
that includes psychological stress, trauma, that's the whole gamut of stress is included in that as well. And also, just speaking of the in-home environments, the blue lights, the
Mm-hmm.
Wi-Fi, the smartphones, the, Apple watches that people are wearing, the Aura rings that aren't on airplane mode, it's like, it's
TikTok, scrolling,
so,
online trolling, bullying. It's like, it's not a friendly environment to the human nervous system. It's not how we were meant to live in any way, shape, or form.
I know. No, it's not at all. And that's why, sometimes I think with what I teach, it's hard for people to wrap their head around because it feels so inconvenient.
Yeah, agree.
And and it's essential.
Mm-hmm.
We have not evolved to a place where our bodies are okay being in the environments that we put them in. And I can't even imagine. It's terrifying for me. I really feel for people that don't have awareness around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really passionate about educating people around electromagnetic frequencies,
Mm-hmm.
just because, and I know you've talked about this a lot too. Like they're damaging our cellular health through so many avenues.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
damaging the exclusion zone water. They're causing calcium to influx into the cell and triggering
Mm-hmm.
inflammation. They are impairing the voltage of our membranes. There's just like we're an electric body.
Right.
Just because we can't see these frequencies, which we see, what is it, 0.5 or 1% of the electromagnetic
Yeah.
spectrum?
Yeah.
Like if we can't see it, it doesn't exist. It's like, no, it does exist and it's causing great harm to human health.
Yeah.
It's hard to convince people to, get everything hardwired
Mm-hmm.
and to hire a building biologist to come in and do an assessment of their home. And it could require someone moving. I just worked with a client who found out that behind her bed where she was sleeping, there was a power line behind her house. And there was an electrical current that was in the carcinogenic range that was impossible to mitigate. Like she had to move. And if you don't hire someone to do that, and this poor woman is chronically ill.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, when she's sleeping, the time that she should be restoring and healing, her body is completely unable to do that because of these frequencies. So these are some of the things that we're faced with just living in the environment that we live in today. And then, of course, the lights, which you talk about a lot. It's like we are living under alien lights that are sabotaging our health.
Yep.
And it requires to have a healthier light environment, you to keep all your lights off and get like lamps so that we can get old school bulbs. And it's hard, I think, for people to kind of grasp sometimes all the things that need to be done to improve
Yeah.
our living environment.
Yeah. And I don't want people to get overwhelmed. I mean, honestly, I feel like people, they can start making these small little changes, right? Like maybe we start with nutrition. Maybe we get rid of the seed oils, the stuff that we talked about at the beginning of the conversation. Get rid of all the unnecessary supplements, seed oils. They replace out some bulbs. They start going outside. They start grounding. I think a lot of people can see tremendous improvements just starting there. And then if they wanted to do some phospholipid support, possibly look at your work and some of your recommendations there. It doesn't have to be, and just start unplugging the Wi-Fi at night, start unplugging things, try not to have a phone charging next to your bed. Like there's so many things people are just doing. They have no idea how harmful this is to their cellular health, their nervous system. They just don't know any better. Like I always intuitively knew when I went into a building that had a bunch of like overhead lights, like even Target, like I can't go into Target now without my blue blockers. Like I just viscerally actually feel sick. But I had that before I even knew about this. I've just always been kind of sensitive to that. But I mean, I go over to like family's house to visit, and it's like 8 o'clock at night. It's dark outside, and they have all the overhead lights on and a TV. And it's like, oh, how can you possibly unwind and relax? Like, and people don't know to do this for their children. They just don't know
Yeah.
this really simple stuff. So if anyone's listening and they're like, I'm just too much, then they just go into shutdown mode. Don't feel like you have to do it all in one day. Like, and you can't, you'll drive yourself completely insane, you know?
It's absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. These small changes are significant when people are. I mean, Sarah, yesterday I had two clients. One client was, wearing an Aura ring and had her
Mm,
Bluetooth on her phone all day.
yeah.
And, people most people don't even, they
They
just
don't
don't even
know.
think about it. They just don't know. And I mean, partly, I'm so grateful to be in the position that I am to be able to help to coach people to make these little changes that can really ultimately have massive impacts on
Mhm.
their health. And also, it's frustrating because it's like these things really at this stage of the game, and maybe I'm delusional to say this, and I think that we know enough about the potential harm to just put a warning on some of these things. Like it's recommended that you keep this on airplane mode.
Mhm.
Recommended that you keep your Bluetooth off and, put the Aura ring on the charger and upload your data once a day or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And then yesterday, I was working with a client that has really, really severe mast cell activation syndrome. And I see this all the
Oh,
time.
that is huge.
There-
Maybe we can talk a little bit about that after you talk about your client.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And I think
Huge.
we, to me, it is a civilized disease, right?
Mhm.
This is a living indoors in an alien environment disease. And
Mhm.
so this client is asking me all of these things that she can take. Well, what about this medication or this supplement or this? And I'm always kind of pulling the reins back and trying to investigate, okay, well, how are you living and breathing? Let's first
Mhm.
make sure that we optimize your day, how you're living and breathing. And she proceeds to tell me that she's spending 2 hours in the car driving to work every day, 2 hours driving home, talking on her cell phone.
Oh God.
And
Bluetooth.
it's like you're in a metal box
Mm.
for 4 hours a day, talking on your cell phone and wondering what supplement to take.
She just has no idea. I mean, people don't understand. At least if you're in the car, like try not to use the Bluetooth. I always have I have my car is definitely an EMF on wheels, but I don't turn on the Bluetooth. I don't turn on the Wi-Fi because it came with Wi-Fi. I turn that off, open the sunroof, crack a window so I at least can get the infrared to expand the easy. And I have a little, I don't know if you know much about the cosmic towers, but I have a little baby tower that I bring with me that can help to harmonize some of it. And yeah, I mean, that's the most you can do. But just, yeah, the Bluetooth, people, when you're talking about non native EMF, Bluetooth is probably the most harmful, over even like Wi Fi, um, over the other things, is the Bluetooth is probably the worst.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really a huge assault. And even just, Sarah, to say too, like just cracking a window. I mean, when you
Get the
think about
infrared.
that metal tin and even just from an EMF perspective, like
Yeah.
being able to allow a avenue to let those go out the window
Hmm.
is huge. So yeah, it's hard. Then the more and more that I learn about this, the more, I mean, I think that you can probably tell from my Instagram presence that I'm just so passionate about, I don't want people to be sick. I
Hmm.
want to help people get well. And I know that the body is capable of healing. I know that it is a healing machine if we give it what it needs to heal.
Hmm.
And so ultimately it's just working to educate, one person at a time,
Yeah.
so that they have some of the strategies to improve their health.
Yeah. And going back to the topic of histamine, I've read Dr. Geldy. I always get his name totally wrong. I'm never going to be able to pronounce it my entire life. I give up. But his book, The Body's Many Cries for Water, essentially explains how the histamine cascade is activated by dehydration. And I know you've done Carrie's hydration masterclass, and it's it's so fascinating. And Carrie actually put out a video today on histamine and dehydration. And I think that this is like a super, super underutilized and misunderstood facet of histamine intolerance. I think there's a sunlight deficiency, there's blue light toxicity, and there's an overabundance of non-native EMFs causing a loss of exclusion zone water, which is leading to set off this histamine cascade. And just when you said she's in her car surrounded by Bluetooth, no windows open, 4 hours a day, I mean, that is literally one of the most unhealthy things you can do for your exclusion zone water, period. Because, Dr. Pollack has shown 15 to 20% loss of exclusion zone water when exposed to Wi-Fi non-native EMF. And not to mention the blue light that you're also exposed to when you're behind a window with nothing cracked. I mean, you're getting tons of blue light in that environment as well, which is going to produce a harmful form of retinol, which can damage cytochrome 4, which is where we make water. So it's like this stuff is, oh, I need to take a DAO supplement. I need to eliminate all these foods. I am like, well, we can address a lot of stuff, and you may not need to go so overboard, right?
Sarah, you are preaching to the choir. Preaching to the choir. Yeah. It's interesting that, and again, I don't have all the answers, and I'm always, learning and exploring and trying to expand my knowledge in this field to better serve humanity. And it's interesting to see how we do tend to just look at these things through the lens of a biochemical imbalance
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or, immune system dysregulation. And people seem to be okay with identifying with these conditions. Like you have no idea how many patients want a diagnosis.
Yeah.
They want to know what they have.
They want a label. They want to, and I get it. Like I went through that with my daughter last year when she has, all these like life-threatening seizures and the violent and aggressive behavior. I'm like, spinal tap, MRI, EEG, tell me something is wrong so I can fix this. People are suffering and sick, and they want a name to put to what they're going through, but a lot of it is mitochondrial dysfunction, right? That is manifesting in these really horrible issues that they're having to deal with.
Yeah. And I would say the vast majority of them. And that's not my work, that's Doug Wallace's work. What,
Right.
95 to 99% of the conditions that we see today are of mitochondrial origin. And those true genetic diseases are usually diagnosed within the first 1 to 3 years of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the individuals that are coming and saying, oh, this is because of this SNP or this genetic predisposition, or I have APOE34 or 44 and I predisposed to all,
THFR.
it's like the healing inputs are the same. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. And of course, I'm not going to play doctor, and I'm not one. Uh, and and so there's always other things that we can do. And depending on the condition, of course, I'm not like a anti-medicine in any way, shape, or form. And I do think it's really important for people to understand, like what the cellular dehydration piece that you just touched on, like when we are sick, when we are in a cell danger response, the inputs are all the same. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. You're a mammal and you need specific inputs in order to heal. And once you provide your body with those inputs, we see amazing healing in the majority of people. When people are willing to be an active participant in their health, right?
Mhm.
There's some people that just aren't, and there's no judgment around that at all.
Well, I mean, the problem that I see is that we are just because I was guilty of this until things really got to a place where I was quote unquote like red pilled. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like, why am I believing all this? Like, because of society, we are kind of brainwashed into thinking like you get a diagnosis, you get sick, you get a diagnosis, you go to the doctor, you get medicine, and the medicine fixes you. But when you start to be a part of this sick care model for enough time, you see that it's a broken system and that the medications don't heal anything. They just suppress symptoms, which can cause other worse symptoms. And again, like you said, there's not like a place where it's like never use medicine. I've had to use medications with my daughter because there's been such a freaking shitstorm that we just got to put this fire to a little bit of a place where we continue to work on the foundations supporting the mitochondrial health. So I don't want to like throw all of that out, but that's just the model. And people, once you start working with people long enough and doing this long enough, you see this is the model by which our society is under. And so when we start talking about these other things, they want to say you're a quack, you're this, you're that. It's like, okay, well, go back to that model then, and I'll see you in a few years, or maybe I won't, but like that's where I think a lot of people come from when they're just like, I don't want to change these things. I don't want to do this because I'd rather just find something to take.
Yeah. And Sarah, I do think that there are people, like we are not going to speak to everyone, right? There are people
Right.
that would prefer to just take a drug and manage it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's no judgment in that because it's all about a value system, right?
Mm-hmm.
For you and I, we have a very high value on our health.
Mm-hmm.
And that value, manifests in our wanting to help other people too. And so those are the people that really want those natural, and I don't even want to say that they're natural remedies. It's like the people that want to understand what a human body needs to stay well. Those are
Mm-hmm.
the people that are going to come, and seek out individuals like us. And so I think that, of course, even with me with mast cell, I'm pretty open about sharing with people that I struggled with horrible mast cell symptoms in my early 30s for years, for 3, 4 years. I was living in an apartment in downtown Calgary, surrounded by towers and electromagnetic frequencies, never, had no idea about the importance of watching the sunrise and UVA rise and getting outside and the toxicity of lights. Just, I mean, I was living an indoor existence on my computer
Mm-hmm.
and with a Wi-Fi router that was in a living room that was 5 feet from where I was working.
Yep.
And during those years, I did take antihistamines. I took H1 and H2 blockers because I was completely at a loss of the other things that I needed to do to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And in that stage of my life, it allowed me to continue working when I probably wouldn't have been well enough to keep working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely think that, this is an evolution and a journey that we're all on and
Yeah.
we're all at our own pace. And so I don't ever want to make it sound like I have all the answers and I've always had all the answers. Like this, all of this information that I have been able to accumulate over the years is largely based on my own experience. And it's those experiences that, lead you down new avenues. And then when you see the light, it's like you want to scream from the mountaintop
Mm-hmm.
and share that information with people because you're like, this whole model is wrong.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree. And that's the thing. Like, I think people just need to kind of get out of that model and look at a different way of thinking. And it can be confusing though, because if you start to go down the functional medicine rabbit hole, a lot of the time, if the practitioner is not informed the way that we are, it can be another trap of let's do this supplement, let's take that supplement, and I think that's how in my space, people that listen to this show, they get the like, oh, they're talking about a supplement, like I don't want to listen to it, you know? Um, but there are some things that are not necessarily like easily able to access in our diet for people to get this sort of support. Like when we talk about, I've been wanting to ask you the whole conversation since we started, nutrition wise, what people could eat. Is there anything they could eat to kind of mimic some of these supplements that you are talking about with the fatty acid support for the cell membrane?
So, or phospholipid
Yeah.
is really going to be the key kind of player in that. So, Sarah, I think so. Egg yolks are an excellent source of phospholipids. Organ meats are a great source. Red meat is a good source. Fish. So, dairy has some pretty good concentrations of phospholipids in it as well. And then we have soy and sunflower. And the body bio-PC is derived from soy, but it's just pure phospholipids. There's no soy proteins in that product. So we can get a lot of these phospholipids from food. And I've never seen somebody that incorporates large, because that I teach a seasonal, local, whole food-based diet. Building that around high quality animal foods. I'm a big proponent of using egg yolks and organ meats and all these foods to provide us with the information that our body needs to heal, and then to be following that really local seasonal approach to eating plant foods. And so for a lot of people that are in Canada that I work with, although I don't work with a ton of people in Canada, their diet over the winter is what I would recommend is going to be mostly animal foods, right? Because nothing grows here in the winter months. So we can get good amounts of these phospholipids from those foods when we're eating good amounts of those foods. And I also have never seen somebody be able to clear DNA adducts and clear intracellular toxins using food alone. That's where the exogenous phospholipids play such a powerful role in providing us with what we need to help to naturally clean the cell from toxins,
Mm.
clear those DNA adducts. And a lot of people probably aren't familiar with the term DNA adduct, but those are toxins that are literally attached to your DNA, covalently bonded. They can be covalently bonded to our nuclear DNA and also our mitochondrial DNA. And those are directly linked to things like cancer.
Mm.
And we want to get those off. If we find that we have, and everybody that comes to the clinic that does the test that shows those DNA adducts has them.
Mm.
And so that's when I feel almost a sense of urgency in making sure that people understand the importance of something like the phospholipid complex in clearing those and then giving your body the materials that it needs. It's like providing the cell with an oil change, Sarah.
Mhm.
You're discarding those damaged aspects of the membrane and providing your body with fresh, healthy phospholipids. So the cell can work the way that it was intended to work. The mitochondrial membrane can work the way that it was intended to work. So again, I think that if we were talking about, living in the 1900s, would I think that there was a need for exogenous lipid replacement therapy, these phospholipids and fatty acids? Probably not.
Mm.
I don't think that that's the case today, just because that's not what I see clinically. And there may be differing opinions around that amongst different clinicians. But I can say pretty confidently that the role that they play in helping to support individuals in restoring their mitochondrial function and ultimately healing is so significant.
Mm. That's really, I mean, that's good to know. And that's really just people are not able to handle the environment today because of the light, the toxicity. So many things are sprayed just outside, like just going outside, like you breathe the air. And so I think that's another thing. It's important that you do what you can to make your indoor environment as healthy as you can with different air filters, water filters, adding minerals back in, things like that. But looking at possibly adding some phospholipid support could be another thing that helps people really enhance their health, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree for sure. I was actually thinking of you, not to go on a tangent. Speaking of just being able to chat with you, I had commented on a post on Instagram, and I thought of you because this post was these nutritionists were telling people that it was better to drink tap water
Oh
then
my God, I got blocked by that person today. I don't know why she blocked me either. I think maybe because she wanted to say something about me, but like she didn't want me to see it. I don't know. It's really weird. But yeah, that was sent to me as well.
I commented with a very long comment and attached like 5 or 6 different studies showing the contamination in tap water. And I'm thinking these poor people on, so speaking of toxicity, I mean, just the water, we
Major.
have
Yeah,
more, like up to 200 different chemicals in one 8-ounce glass of tap water, including chemotherapy and other pharmaceutical drugs. And we have glyphosate and fluoride and radon and
I know. When somebody sent that to me, I was like, wait, what? Like, wait, what? We're telling people that drinking filtered water is now dangerous. And it was like taken out of context, like acting as though none of us are saying to add minerals back in to this filtered water. Yeah.
I know. I feel really sad for people that don't have a foundation in
Mhm.
this stuff
Or they
because
lack critical thinking skills. This is the thing. You lack critical thinking skills. If look at something like that and you're like, oh, I can just drink water from my tap. Like,
well, Sarah, there were comments on that post that said, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to get rid of my AquaTrue. I bought it on." I was like, "What is happening?" So yeah, the toxicity thing in the world is real. And I think that I personally believe that our body is so incredibly designed to be able to eliminate toxins when we give it what it needs to do the
hmm
job that it was intended to do.
hmm
And I also believe that it is absolutely imperative for us to understand the importance of protecting ourselves from as many of these toxins as we can. Of course, when we walk out our door, there's no way to, protect ourselves from all of them. But inside our home, we can. We can have an air purification system. We can filter our water. And yes, we can add good minerals back to that
You
and
should structure it.
imprint it with prayers and intention, like both of us.
Yes, please. Lots of prayer and intention is much, much needed in today's world.
Yeah, the sticky notes are in our house are accumulating very rapidly. We have a whole drawer. Every time there's a glass of water, a bottle of water filled, I'm imprinting it with some sort of affirmation.
I love it.
So I mean, there's a lot that we can do to, lower that toxic load, and I do think that that's necessary. And then we can
Mhm.
also use things like the Body Bio PC is a great tool, and getting outside in the sunshine and getting a tan. The
Melanin.
power of melanin. Yeah. And the power
And
of
not
grounding.
like, I feel like the other thing is like people want this like one solution. It's the melanin. Melanin does this, melanin does that. Yes, it's healthy. I have a tan that I was like looking at myself yesterday. I'm like, wow, like I was so pasty, pale white for like most of my life. And now I've really, the last few years, really worked on building out my sun tolerance, getting a tan, spending a safe amount of time in the sun. But I'm not going to walk around telling everyone that if they get a tan and build enough a tan, it's going to like, you know, be the be all end all cure all for their life. Like there is not just like one person, there's not one guru, there's not one methodology, there's not one thing. It's like looking at your lifestyle as a whole and looking at what makes sense for you. And that's the whole thing about that like post this morning. I'm like, was there a Flint, Michigan thing that happened? Or are we just like
There was,
we're just
there,
throwing that out the window because the holistic people are all wrong? Like
yeah.
let's think about how, and I try to tell this in my when I write my newsletters, I'm like, please, whatever information I'm giving you, look at it, look at the study that I send you and just make a decision. Does this apply to me? Is this relevant to me? And if not, that's fine. Like it's okay if you don't agree with me. Like I no hard feelings. I just want to give people, and I know you're the same way, you like to give them information. And I love all the stuff you've been doing. Like I found you, gosh, I don't know how many months ago. It was like over the winter I found you and I was like, oh, because you just know how to just lay it out, put it out there so intelligently. And you're not just saying stuff to scare people. Like you really do want to see people thrive and heal. And I appreciate that so much about you.
Aw, well, thanks, Sarah. That means a lot. I do truly. I mean, it hurts me deeply to see the level of chronic illness that we see today and the number of people that are suffering. And, if I can help a handful of people, it's like I feel my work on this planet has been accomplished, as
Yeah.
I really think that. And you're doing such an amazing job too of just improving the lives of so many people. And I mentioned to you before, I've worked with
Aw.
people that have gone through your programs, and you just really do provide so much value. And yeah, not everything that I say is going to be, right and always 100% accurate. And I get lots of criticism, and that's okay. Because I know my intentions,
Mhm.
and ultimately that is just to better the health of as many people as I can. So,
Definitely. And I think the people that, I've had people that have been with me since I was carnivore yogi
mhm.
5 years ago. I was like, oh, carnivore this, carnivore that. And I have people that have been with me ever since then. And they've kind of seen that if I'm wrong about something, I will say it. And I'm not going to just stand behind it. If it's wrong, I will come out and talk about it. And, it's a life is a learning experience, and you always have to be evolving, learning, and observing what's going on around you. If 30 people come to you with histamine issue, you got to start to say what is in the environment of these people that is causing the histamine issue, not to look at the body as a faulty thing that can't handle histamine. Is something in the environment, something in the lifestyle that is exacerbating or creating this issue. And I think that's what's really missing in the health conversation period, is just looking at health through that lens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always, and I know that there's many people in the whole quantum field that say this as well. And I've seen this firsthand, that these people are not defective. It's
Right.
the environment. It really is the environment. And if they don't change the environment in which their body is in, they're not going to be able to get well. And
Yep.
some people just aren't willing to. I had a person that I was working with recently that went to a place close to the equator, and she was there for 10 days, and all her symptoms went away. And she came back to her inner city condo and then is complaining that she's sick again, and that the recommendations aren't helping. It's like, well, you know, at some point your eyes do need to be open, that and this is, I think, true for so many people that are really chronically ill today, that living in a city, a population dense city, is probably going to be a barrier to accessing health. So
Hmm.
it may require them, relocating. I think there's so many things that we can do in the location that we're in. And for some of these people that actually have that experience, when they go away and they're better, when they're on the beach and they're in the sun, and then they come back to, a closed environment, downtown location, surrounded by neighbors with all these devices, no access to outdoors, and they flare again. It's like, what is
Hmm.
that telling you? It's not you. That's the
Right.
defect is in you. The defect is in the environment.
Right. 100%. 100%. And I just love letting people kind of find that conclusion themselves. I mean, I hope that she'll get to a place where she's like, all right, well, what do I have to do to get myself in the right environment? Because I don't want to feel this way.
Yeah.
That's on her. That's not anything that you can do or anyone else can do. She has to make that decision herself. And yeah, it's a hard decision to make. I mean, we're trying to get out of the city and figure out a way to do it, but we've got elderly parents around us that are sick and that need us. And so it's like, yeah, I get it. And I don't want to be away from my sisters and my family, but at some point I got to get my kids out of this environment, because I know it's not helping them, and it's not where I want to raise my son and where I want to grow old or any of that. And so you got to make hard decisions sometimes in life, and they're not always convenient and they're not always easy when it comes to your health. So,
Yeah. But everything is so much better when you feel good,
yeah,
so much better.
yes, it really is. It really is.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find you if and I know we talked a little bit before we started filming. You do more of like concierge with people, and you're kind of looking at changing how you work with people, but you do take clients. I know you're on Instagram. What are some other ways people can look you up and find you?
I'm most active on Instagram for sure. I do have a website. It's just justinestenger.com. And I have a phospholipid and fatty acid ebook if anyone's interested in learning more about phospholipids and fatty acids and the role they play in supporting their cells. My Instagram handle is Justine Cellular Nutrition. And BodyBio is at bodybio.com if people are interested in learning more about their products as well. And you can always send me a DM on Instagram if you have questions about any of their products. I'm really passionate about helping to educate individuals on the role that they play in helping to improve their health.
Yeah, and I'll say Justine talked to me on Zoom and didn't charge me money or anything, and I really appreciate that to help with Alexis, and, it just says a lot about her and her spirit of wanting to help, and, I just really appreciate you, Justine, and all the amazing things you're putting out in the world, and, highly recommend if you're listening to go follow her and her work, and, we'll have to do this again for sure.
Yeah, this was so fun. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Thank you. And I'll put all the links in the show notes to your social and how to get in touch with you. And yeah, we'll do it again for sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. Just a quick little reminder, this is not medical advice nor meant to be taken as a substitute for working one-on-one with a healthcare practitioner. And if you enjoy the show, please head on over to Apple or Spotify to leave the show up to a 5-star review. If you're over on YouTube, please leave us a like, leave us a comment. I really appreciate you for being here, for listening to the show, and your support means the world to me as I continue to try to pull guests from around the world to bring you informative content to empower you to make decisions about your own health. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.